Dwelling with Tactics podcast, and today we're talking about learning. Basically, it is from a summary of Ultra Learning by Scott H. Young. I'm gonna show you the book really quickly. Interesting book. And I have totally also noticed that the way in which you're going through a book summary, whether you're reading it by yourself basically and or me reviewing it on a podcast, really does make a tremendous difference. I get concepts, I understand concepts way better and way more easily by going through them when I just feel like doing so and not when I am going through them on the podcast. But there's also a foreword by James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits. Atomic Habits, also an amazing book about building habits and also breaking habits. So smoking, for example, or drinking and whatever. And it is quite comprehensive. As far as I remember, there are also a few articles by James Clear on his website around those topics, around the same thing. Basically, a few excerpts from the book, I would argue. I'm not quite sure. It is kind of the case. And also incredibly interesting. I've reviewed the book, I think, probably several times on a podcast up to this point, and also the articles that I found on the web, as well as Ultra Learning. I do remember that I have before went through it. But I have written down a few pretty interesting concepts or pretty interesting thoughts from the book, which I do want to go through now. A struggle timer. I have never thought about that, but it really makes sense and it is quite easy. Having a struggle timer, meaning maybe a stopwatch, maybe some timer, maybe whatever you're using. And this is the time till you basically give up. This is the time in which you're struggling. When you're struggling with something and you feel like, okay, I want to quote unquote give up. I actually do not want to call it giving up, but you want to stop doing that. Set a timer for, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, and try till this timer goes off. And then maybe ask somebody or search for something, or maybe you kind of go through the materials that you're having again, because maybe it is about learning and you're trying to recall something. So having this struggle timer, having this timer in which you're struggling and really trying hard to get to the solution and try to do so, I think is a great concept, because it is a set amount of time in which you're gonna feel maybe not the best quite, but it is a set amount of time. It's not an infinite amount of time. It is not just 1 minute. It is quite something, but not too much as well. Project-based learning. You probably have learned before learning. You've heard before learning by doing. It makes sense. Learning by doing makes sense in many ways, but not in all of the ways. And it is also something Young pointed out in the book. Project-based learning or learning by doing makes sense. It is a good thing. It is a good concept when it is about maybe, playing basketball. I think it is easier and better and way more efficient than going through books around basketball about how to throw the ball and so on. But when it is about flying a plane, might not be that great. When it is about driving a car, might not be that great if you have never been in a car and you might be on your own or something. And also learning languages, going to a new country without any help, without any guidance, without anything. And those people also do not maybe speak English when it is not about English. Yada, yada, yada. These are certain situations, these are certain frameworks in which project-based learning or learning by doing might not be that smart. But still, most often it can be quite a good thing, especially when you're thinking about simulations. So when you're trying to fly a plane or learn to fly a plane or just driving a car, maybe some other things. There are many things that you can drive, and doing this through a simulator or learning it through a simulator is a good idea, because the environment is safe, you're safe, your life is safe, other people are safe, but you're still able to probably learn quite quickly. Even though simulations, it also I think depends on the simulation. If it is a good one, it is obviously better. If it is a bad one, it is not that great. In terms of learning itself, trying to recall things when you're about to memorize something, when you're trying to memorize something, recalling is a good option. Recalling makes sense. And also, it is, I think, something like spaced repetition or spaced repetition recall, something like this. Basically flashcards or Zettelkasten. As it sometimes it is also called, even though this might be a different concept, but still having your flashcards and you're going through them in a certain interval. So we're having one row and then another row and then the third row, and the third row being the one that are the easiest, so you do not have to go through them that often. And the first row are those in which maybe you haven't learned anything about, or they're just really hard and you're always going from one row to the other row and kind of play it with a bit. I guess there are set intervals or set principles in which you should be doing this. Definitely something to look up, definitely something to think about, but not being like. And I want to underline not being like, okay, I'm just reading through my materials. I'm just going to go through the textbook and then I have learned anything because I know, okay, this I have read before and that I already know and whatnot. No, this is an illusion. You don't know shit there, only by recalling. Well, maybe not only by recalling, but recalling is a very good and effective method to know that you actually have learned something and that you actually know what you should be knowing. So closing your eyes, closing the book, and trying to recall everything that you have learned before, or that you should know when you're seeing a certain picture, or you should know when you're seeing a certain formula, or whatever it might be, or maybe a picture that you should know when you're seeing a certain text, a certain sentence, and so on and so forth. Recalling it, active recall, and also spaced repetition, whatever. In terms of learning in general, having a list of concepts, facts, and also procedures is something Young recommended. I believe it is good. Concepts, basic concepts, then facts, what is just what it is, and then the procedure. I believe procedure means the way of doing things, how you are maybe also doing things. Not quite sure what he means by procedure, to be honest, but concepts and facts make sense. But why splitting things up? I think grasping concepts many times is more important than knowing all the facts. So basically having a big pile of something you have to learn, of something you want to learn, and structuring it, and also compromising it to quite some degree, I think. Depends on the situation, depends on what you're trying to learn. But of course, when you know all the concepts are important and the facts and the procedures do not really matter, because things shift. For example, he brought up basketball. Basketball probably is not really about the concepts nor the facts, but most of basketball is about the procedures of doing things, actually engaging in it. So it also depends on what you're trying to learn, but I think it just really helps to figure out what is important and what isn't, what should I be focusing on and what shouldn't I be focusing on, which leads to a to-do list and also a not to-do list. This is, I think, by Tim Ferriss indeed, in a completely different context, I guess, but I'm not quite sure. But I think it is still applicable to so many areas of life, knowing what to do and also knowing what not to do. Something else to consider is who has done it before. A person that hopefully and at best was in the same situation as you were, maybe having the same education or similar education, kind of the same set point. Because obviously when I don't know, if I'm learning judo and I'm comparing myself to somebody, or I'm trying to learn from somebody that already knew karate before, or MMA or something similar, then the set points, the initial start is just completely different. And so listening to this person and doing what this person did might not be necessarily applicable to you and your situation. And building intuition. The last one, building intuition. Trying to build intuition as fast as possible, I would say, so that you can actually make sure that you can judge what you're learning, and you can judge your material, and you can judge what might be true or might not be true, things that you might look up in the internet, things that you might go through the lectures again or whatever, to make sure that you're learning the right thing, and also to understand things way better. And that is quite it. These are a few notes, it's not a summary, just a few notes, a few points from Ultra Learning by Scott H. Young. I think definitely worth going through, maybe just a summary, but yeah. I hopefully have shared something of value to you, and I'll also hopefully see you again really soon.